All right, let's get started. I'm going to give it over to David, and he's going to take it from there.
All right, welcome everybody. I'm David Michelson. I'm a product manager on Statuspage, and I'm joined by Chase Wilson, product marketing manager on Statuspage. And today we're talking about Statuspage for education organizations. Before getting started, I want to point out that we'll be answering questions at the end of the presentation. You'll notice a Q&A widget at the bottom of your screen that you can use to ask questions along the way. Already saw some pop in, and we'll get to them at the end. And also a recording of this will be sent out after the webinar. Let's get started. So I'm sure you've all been hearing this a lot lately, but we are talking at a time where a global pandemic has driven businesses across the world online. Atlassian is no exception. Here you can see what was once Statuspage's biggest in-person meeting is now fully remote in Zoom. And schools are no exception either. In fact, schools everywhere are going through a really difficult remote digital transformation, moving from the physical classroom and campuses to online. The online tools that schools used before the pandemic and the ones that they're adding now, like Zoom, have become mission critical for educating students outside of the classroom, whether they're third-party applications like we see here or ones that are made in-house. And with this increased dependence on online services, it becomes even more important to proactively communicate the status of those services to the people that care, whether it's students, faculty, parents, administrators, etc. That way, when things inevitably do go down, users aren't in the dark trying to troubleshoot the problem themselves or sending emails to tech support or calling into the school. Instead, they already know about the issue at hand, and schools can focus on getting the issue fixed rather than replying to help requests and putting out fires. But how do we get to the right side, to the green, and do that proactive communication step? Well, Statuspage is a tool designed to do just that, and many educational institutions are already using it for that purpose, whether they're K-12s, school districts, online learning platforms, or universities like you see here. And we know this time is really hard on schools, so to help, we're offering a free year of Statuspage to qualifying orgs who apply on our education site. If you're interested in applying, no worries on tracking the link here. We'll also be sending it out after the webinar and giving a little reminder at the end. So now we'll cover a little more about the basics of what Statuspage is, use cases it has in educational institutions, and also dive into real life examples. For our more advanced Statuspage users here, feel free to use the Q&A to ask any deeper questions about the things we'll cover. So Statuspage, again, is a communication tool that helps you inform your users about your system's current status, any live incidents, and scheduled maintenance. So here's Harvard's Statuspage. Their current status looks great. No incidents, no maintenance, all systems all operational, all green, good to go. Status pages are made up of components, which represent the services that your users depend on. Highlighted here, we can see the components that Harvard decided represented their system of services that their users depend on. Of course, this is different for every organization, and each page has the flexibility to make these their own. You can also communicate about live incidents or unplanned outages by posting real-time updates to your status page, like this one, letting your users know that you're on it. Or you can warn users about upcoming scheduled maintenances or planned outages so they can plan around that maintenance downtime. Your users can also make sure that they get all these updates without needing to go directly to the status page by subscribing to notifications via email, SMS, webhooks, and more. So we just talked a lot about what a status page does on the outside looking in, but what does it take to get a status page up and running? Well, after signing up, it'll only take a few minutes. Statuspage will first ask you to create some components that, again, represent the services you provide to your users or your system. For our Acme School page example, we'll add the grading portal and Lion Space Acme School's intranet service. There you go. Now, if we ever run into an outage or maintenance, we can specify which of those services are affected and how critically, whether a minor degradation or a major outage. We can add a custom logo to make the page our own. We'll have some Acme pride and add the Acme logo. And voila, we've created our own personalized status page for Acme School. Now everything looks green, fine, and dandy. But let's say that we just got reports from multiple faculty members saying that they can't log into their grading portal. We confirmed the issue on our end, and now it's time to post our first incident. Going back to Statuspage, we can quickly post an incident. We'll fill out a descriptive title at the top, write an empathetic and transparent description, indicate what part of the incident we're in, whether we're investigating it, we've identified it, or we fixed it, or it's all done. Identify which components are affected and how critically. Here, the grading portal has a major outage. And finally, send notifications so our subscribers can know the issue without having to navigate to the page. Click create, and we'll see the incident is now live on the status page on the left. And our subscribers were notified as seen in the email on the right. Now, this is just the beginning, as we saw with Harvard's page, and we'll see more later. There's a lot more we can do. So let's add a couple other basic customizations. Let's say Acme School uses Zoom for all of its virtual classes. We can actually embed Zoom status into our own page by using a third-party component. So let's check out our components and go to the third-party tab. Here we can choose from a plethora of services and have their statuses trickle down and reflect on our own page. Oh, there's Zoom. Let's go ahead and add it. So go back to our status page and see that Zoom is now part of our own page. So if Zoom actually updates the status of their meetings component that we see here, that status will trickle down to our page and let our users know that Zoom is down without us moving a finger. And of course, we could start doing some other basic customizations like adding a custom domain, make our page run not only on our own branding, but also our own domain. Or we could use a number of Statuspage's integrations to make our Statuspage communication process more seamless. So that was a basic overview of some of what Statuspage is. And now I will hand it over to Chase.
All right, thanks, David. So now we're going to go into who's going to use a status page and why would they use it. And now that you've heard a little bit about the basics of what a status page is and the functionality, we're going to dive into how that plays out in real life. And so essentially, no matter how you're connected to education, so whether you're a parent, a student, staff, a status page is really going to help you out. And especially in this COVID-19 era, where online services are becoming the norm for educational institutions, we think that a status page is going to be one of the best tools to help smooth out that transition. So the first team that we're going to talk about is IT teams. And depending on the size of your organization, your IT team might be dozens of people or even just one person. But IT teams at your organization are always working really hard to keep all of your services like your Wi-Fi or your VPNs up and running. And that's gotten really hard with the higher number of services they need to track these days and the fact that services have to be online all the time. And so with a status page, your IT team is going to be able to alert all of your staff and students about outages as soon as they happen via text, email, or other channels. And if there are certain stakeholders who want to know the instant that something is down, such as like the principal of the school or the head of engineering at your organization, they can subscribe to your status page so that they can always know the most recent information about an outage. And instead of answering a flood of emails and calls asking what's going on with the service, why is it down, that communication can be deflected by having this centralized status page for people to visit whenever they're unsure if there's an issue or not. You can also show the status of systems you depend on, such as Zoom, directly on the status page and show any updates from that company without having to do anything yourself. So this is that third-party component feature that David talked about earlier. And if you need to run maintenance on your services, you can tell your users about those details really easily with a special maintenance incident type that can be shown on both your website and your status page. So don't let anyone be surprised by maintenance or planned downtime again. Make sure that they all know exactly when that's going to happen. For teachers, you're often seen as the go-to resource whenever there's a technical problem in the moment. even though you don't really have visibility into that issue. So a status page can help get you that information really quickly. So you might have had a situation where the service wasn't working, but you weren't sure if it was a problem with your computer, the school setup of the service, or if it was the service company itself. With a status page, now you're going to get a text the instant your IT team knows that there's a problem. And right away, you'll be able to talk to your students or their parents about a problem and never have to answer with, I'm not really sure what the problem is again. And you can also be alerted proactively if a service like Blackboard is down and is keeping your students from doing their work. So if the site where your students do their work was down for 6 hours last night, you should be told about that right away so you can respond appropriately, whether that's sending out assignments through a different method, delaying deadlines, or any other kind of response that you want to take. And if you are a parent, working from home and having your student run into issues is really tough. And so you can figure out what the problem is much more quickly if you have a status page and stop having long interruptions for figuring out those technical issues. So if you see that everything's working just fine on the status page, now you know that it's an issue with your own computer setup or Wi-Fi, and it's something that you should be looking into. So that helps you identify and fix any issues for your child much more quickly, or know if all you have to do is wait for someone else to make the fix, right? If it's from your school or from the other service. You can also find out via text messages or email alerts from the school before your child tells you about a problem. You're a busy person with a busy life, and this helps you understand what's going wrong without needing to rely on the explanation from your child, which might be very vague and not exactly the most helpful thing in this time. And if you're a student, who is on a Zoom call for your class and it suddenly cut off, you're going to want to know whether or not you're the only person who can't access that platform, and figure out if it's systematic or if it's just you. And if you have an assignment that's due in 10 minutes, but you can't access the site, you can find out via email or text right away if it's the service that's down, and that can point to the problem directly and explain why you weren't able to turn something in on time, right? And you can work with your teachers to figure out an alternative. And many of the services that you use, especially if you're a college student, require a VPN or campus Wi-Fi to work. And so if there's an issue with that service, you want to know right away, and also know when that problem is fixed so that you can use those dependent services again. So now you can do your work more efficiently. And here's a quote from Luke Bradbury, who's an engineer at the University of Derby. But his favorite aspect of Statuspage is that it gives them a really clear and easy system to keep the students and staff informed when they need it most, which is all of those use cases I was just talking about. But from here, I'm going to show you some examples of live status pages. So this is UCSB, and they recently had a Zoom issue because Zoom upgraded to Zoom 5.0 a few days ago. And anyone who had upgraded to that was unable to be on any Zoom calls for classes. That outage lasted 3 hours, and the UCSB status page was really important for helping students understand what was going on during that time while no one could get on. I'm sure they prevented a lot of support emails and calls to their IT team while they were trying to get the organization back on track and make sure everybody downloaded the right version of Zoom. So for some others, you saw this page earlier, but this is the Harvard status page. And you can see that they actually started including Zoom on their status page and made it the most prominent service. Harvard is also very thorough and has all of their different services listed, from email services all the way down to its web publishing platform. And they use nested components, which means that they have a category like email services that has multiple sub-services below it. So not only are they showing you that their email services are operational, it might just be Google Apps Gmail that's having a problem, and maybe Office 365 email is just fine. So this is another example of a school, MIT, and right now they're currently having scheduled maintenance. So you can see that they have a DNS server IP change that is currently in progress. And compared to the Harvard page, the MIT page is much less specific with their components, and they try to show just the general status of overall categories instead of diving really deeply into the specific name of each service. This is the UC Davis status page. And here you can see that they were having an incident at this time with 2 different services simultaneously. Both of these instances had an initial investigating update, which you can see there underneath the color bar, which means that they believe that they had, which means that they found the problem and then they made an initial communication about it. And you can see the ServiceNow degradation instance also has a monitoring update, which means that they believe they've actually found the solution and they're waiting to see whether or not that fix works. So below the instance, you can see the other services that are currently operational, which is what their status page would look like if they didn't have instance open right now. And finally, this is another green status page. This is Wharton, and they take the Harvard approach and list out very specific services, and some of those are nested as well. They currently have no instance, and that's why you can see that everything is green and operational. So there are also third-party status pages, right? And so this is a page that you can subscribe to, or you can put on your school status page to get notifications about incidents when they happen. So some of these examples are Slack, which is a common messaging tool. And here they have their own status page that shows the current status of their system and whether or not there's any problems. This is the Zoom status page. So if there was a problem with Zoom, you could subscribe to this and get an update right away. And then there are also education-specific status pages, such as blackboard.com. They have this status page here that's very complex and has things for different days and different geographical areas. But as David mentioned earlier, we are giving away a free year of Statuspage. So send a message to your IT team, or if you are on the IT team, just start trying to build out that page after going to the link here. I think we'll be sending out this link also in an email about a day afterwards. So if you don't want to memorize it here, you can wait for that. Otherwise, you can go to this landing page and start the application. But at this time, I think that David and I are going to answer any questions that have come up. And if you haven't asked a question yet, now is your time to jump in and get some better detail. A pretty common question that comes up was, it's kind of like, how long does it take to actually activate a status page? And so as you can kind of see through David's demo, it really only takes about 10 minutes probably to set up a status page. If you want to do a really complex one, it can take a little longer. And if you want to add a lot of third-party components, or if you're advanced enough to use monitoring tools, if you want to integrate those, it'll take a bit longer. But realistically, you could get a page up in 5 to 10 minutes. And it looks like someone actually activated it during the webinar, which is very impressive. Nice work.
Awesome.
As David mentioned, we'll be sending out a recorded version of this too. That'll come at the same time as the link. And so, you know, if the information here was useful, or you just want to replay it, get an overview, feel free to check out that resource. You can also send it to other teachers, other professors, your IT teams, and get them going on it. All right. Well, I think that is about it for the questions. Feel free to send me an email directly if you have questions. I'm cwilson@atlassian.com. I'll be happy to answer any of those. We're really excited about getting Statuspage out to more educational institutions. And if you're not a school, if you're an educational organization, still let us know. That is totally fine, and we'd love to help you. You don't have to be a school, K through 12 school, or college. We just primarily have a lot of collegiate clients currently, but happy to help with other situations and organizations. So we do have one question here. So does the status page only work if the institution has an Atlassian instance, or can families use this resource? Yeah, that's a great question. We'll be going through all of the people who apply one by one and looking into each use case really specifically. So if you think that there's something we could really help you out with on the status page side, feel free to submit an application and then we can kind of talk that through with you. I think it's kind of hard to know without a ton of detail what we do there, but and I don't know that we've had a lot of parents use it for them and their kids, but definitely even if you don't have a status page, you can subscribe to any status page you want and get updates from it. But yeah, just submit an application. We'll be happy to talk to you about it more.
Yep. And yeah, so we also have a free plan that is less sweet of a deal than the education offer we're going. So anyone could really get spun up with a status page and share it with the people that care about their services. If you are a family that cares about status of different things, you can go find their status pages and subscribe to them. And, or you could just easily spin one up. Yeah.
And then another reference that came in as commercial help desks. So Atlassian has a Jira Service Desk product, which also has a free plan. So all Atlassian products now have a free plan, by the way. So if you want to, handle your tasks, work with Trello, work with Statuspage, Jira, anything there, they all have a free plan. But yeah, Jira Service Desk is our commercial help desk product, and it actually integrates directly with Statuspage. So you can have the updates show on your help desk and see if there's an incident or not. So if people go to the help desk to start submitting a ticket, you'll actually see a flag from Statuspage that says, hey, there's an active incident and it's in this area. So that way less support tickets get submitted. Okay, well, I think that's all. But yeah, like I said, feel free to reach out to me directly and I'm happy to answer any questions then. Thanks so much for coming and hope you learned a lot.
Thank you so much, everybody. Great questions, great feedback.